identify basically why the three line of defense approach us over the time and what we should do about it. Then the importance of knowledge sharing, which is today is the key issue, but not just between line of defense, but also with intelligence government units. And the importance of knowledge sharing and control, the importance of control and expertise within the first line of defense, because it's the first line against preventing financial crime, because we are talking about prevention, not cure, because cure is maybe too late. Okay, this is a general overview. How, of course, the three line of defense work, their responsibility, the reporting line. I just wanted to give you a slide to make understanding what they do. The first line of defense is the management, the control, the internal control responsible for this. The second line, especially we focus on risk management, quality, inspection, and compliance. The third line we know is internal audit. All of them, as you can see, report to the senior management, but all internal audit report to the governing body and the audit committee. And then, of course, outside we still have overview supervision from external audit for big corporation, listed corporation, and regulator. Okay.
Sorry, because I think for them it's very interesting this and the relationship with the governing bodies. So the first line, why is first? It's called first. Is the first in line in which sense?
Because they manage, they are the risk owner, so the client facing, I would say.
So
and
the first in contact with
is the first attempt, like is the first, let's say, barrier to a crime organization.
So if I come to the bank and I would like to put money into the bank, this first line is the first line of the
Yes.
Then you have the compliance, and then at the end
exactly.
And only the audit is connected with governing body.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, that's
exactly. Let's say that only audit, because of their, of course, expertise activities over the control environment, have the direct, of course, connection with the executive and the governing body, because of course, if there is an issue that has been identified here, it's very much an issue.
So in terms of corporate governance for them, if a compliance officer has an issue and they would like to raise the issue to the CEO, it's filtered to the senior management?
No, not necessarily,
So,
because of course, let's say this is more in a normal BAU, business as usual, when I say
okay,
BAU.
there is not a particular...
Of course, if there is something that happened and then is outside of control, it's not because it's been flagged by internal audit, but happened, anywhere in the first line, you can still, escalate to senior managers. I would say that you always escalate to this level, and then this level escalates.
So this filter exists. The senior management. So if unfortunately, it's the senior management to be involved.
Yes.
They can stop it.
Yes.
That's in terms of governance is important.
Just to let you know, big organization like, for instance, a corporation like Bank of America that is huge, as 100,000 of employees. The senior manager are probably people that I will never meet in my life. They are very top men that are based in the US, most likely. And then, you cannot really speak to them directly because they are very executive, very top level people. You have an internal referral like whistleblowing or internal referral, and then they also try to facilitate you to connect to them. But unfortunately, there is always someone in the middle that say, "What are you doing?" It's very much, this happens, it's everywhere, it's competition, positive, negative, I don't know how we would like to say that, but there are always some filters. So it's important in the organization to have process and procedures, to have a referral that that at some point will arrive to the manager and then they have to look after, of course, the matter. Okay. So on this presentation, of course, I have a background in first line quality assurance mainly. So I make sure that things are done well, and you don't pass. If you don't say that is enough. I'm focusing on the CDD KYC, which is the main responsibility of the first line of defense when it comes to fight financial crime, because you need to know who are you dealing with. So if you know what you're dealing with, you can make an assessment, risk, and understanding also the operations, the transaction, and the business that the client is undertaking. So, and then in this way you can assess the risk, and then why the first line of defense is the risk owner. So they own the risk in order to collect all the information, so they gather client information, they do the document gap analysis to make sure that the documentation is accurate, is compliant with the regulations. Of course, they undertake screening on the customer in terms of political exposures, affiliation, sanction exposure, and adverse media, because these are three key elements in assessing the risk and reputation of an individual or an entity. Then they obtain senior manager approval, and this is the connection with the senior management for higher risk cases, because this is required by the regulation. So the fourth money laundering directive, but also the one before 2007, and 2003 always involved the senior manager approval for high risk cases, because they own the risk. The sales manager own the risk. It's not just the first line is not just the analyst, but it's the sales owner, the relationship manager, people that meet clients and talk to them. So they filter the information for the analyst. Then the analyst undertake, of course, additional investigation to make clarity and have some audit trail for the third line of defense to, of course, prove the information of the client. And then, of course, the first line also refers to the second line when, of course, there is, again, a high-risk scenario. They refer to the local MLRO, the money laundering reporting officer, and of whether a client is so complex or so unusual that doesn't really fit into internal policies and procedures. And then you need to refer to the second line to discuss and try to understand which is the best way to proceed, okay? And then they are the procedures owner. I highlighted this for a later stage, just to remind me. The second line, responsibilities in terms of AML and prevention, of course, they make a recommendation on client outside policy, so it's connected. Case disposition in the high-risk scenario, for example, politically exposed person, or whether there is a minimal sanction exposure that is still allowed to get on board because the client has an affidavit, is authorized to deal with Iran, for example, because of humanitarian product or services, because there are some, of course, exceptions. But I'm not talking about sanctions today, it's too long. Then we have, of course, the responsibility, and this is how it is today. They do also testing and monitoring, so the quality, so they make sure that the first line is working well. However, this is a sample population, okay? So it's not that they do this for any client. So they choose a number of clients randomly or on a specific thematic, I don't know, client type that could be correspondent banking, because of course they are at a risk, they could be PEP again, or just a sample population of high risk cases, medium or risk. But it's a sample population. They also normally, in big organizations that are more structured, the investigation is part of the second line of defense. And then here we will probably expand a little bit more in some other slides. Investigation are all the people that have the opportunity to speak to law enforcement agency, collect data from also outside sources. They utilize investigative tools, so they are more connected on a broader level. They have, of course, a better view of the client, okay, through the investigation technique. Then, of course, if the second line has some issues, spot some issues, especially from the test and monitoring and the investigation approach, let's say, and task, they report to senior manager, as we were saying before. Everyone reports to the senior manager, and then they are the policy owner, okay? So, what is the issues here, just to introduce what I'm going to expand later. The first line of defense doesn't have an holistic view of the client because they don't hold investigation information. So they don't know, they don't have intelligence information. So it's like that today I take this, this is what I gather for my first line file, and this is gathered by the second line, but I will never see those documents. So, and this probably is one of the key issues that is generating all these failures. Okay, so moving on. This is, I use this pyramid to, of course, put somehow the division of the three lines of defense and some, what kind of information they have about the client and where are the data. So we have seen the first line of defense, as explained before, gather all the information of the client through the document self-sourcing, is mainly check for public information. And then they create their file following maybe sometimes a checklist or you know, like some guidance that they have a procedures. Again, procedures. Then, but this is generating what? The first disconnection, because that means that they have basic knowledge about the client. Okay. To have very deep understanding about the client activity, you must do a lot of researches and connect all the dots. And then, unfortunately, the first line very often is not sufficiently skilled to interpret law and regulations and to understand the red flags. Do you know what is a red flag in terms of AML and money laundering? There are some indicators that have been identified by FATFA, by the Joint Money Laundering Steering Group and Wolfberg that indicate a higher level of money laundering. For instance, when we have undeveloped countries, you know, high-risk countries, that they don't have the same legislative level of, for instance, the UK or European Union. And then I would say that the problem today is that all these activities are divided among the line of defense, and there is no knowledge sharing, also in terms of skills, not just in terms of client information, but also in terms of skills. Then, of course, we have the third line that has, again, an holistic view of the client. They apply specific investigative technique that are audit technique, and then they make recommendation on improvements. So, if audit pick up a problem, the remaining people, second line, first line, must comply with. It's not just a recommendation, okay, I'll think about it, I'll let you know. They must, because if audit detect a problem, everyone else needs to comply and change the way they are working, because audit is the final, I would say, voice in terms of are we doing right or are we doing wrong? Okay, so this is, here I will focus a little bit more. So we have seen already what the first and the second line and the third line does. So just more a repetition, so I'm not gonna force again and repeat myself. What I want to discuss is this beautiful line that is a time frame. Okay, I wanted to talk about, maybe I will give you an example. Let's pretend that I'm an analyst that sits in the first line of defense. Yeah, I'm working.
What is
Computer.
the function of analyst? I don't think that's
The analyst is, again, the KYC. So the analysts gather the information. So I need to gather all the information and do my document gap analysis, my screening. I need to know my client. So I actually work on my computer. I connect myself to the public domain. I self-source the constitutional document of the client. For instance, if you are talking about a corporation, as a client, I need to identify the beneficial owner, so we actually own the entity. Who control my entity, because it's not necessarily the same person. And then, of course, understanding where they operate, the nature of business, understanding the transaction. So this is with the first line. Then I do my work, caseload, I would say. And then I forget, or maybe I don't know that I need to do the screening on the controller of my entity, okay? And then I leave this is a mistake, because I need to know the controller of my entity by regulation. The Fourth Money Laundering Directive oblige the entity to collect beneficial ownership information and control. So this person doesn't know, there was distracted, I don't know, and then he's starting to make mistake over the time. He's not checking the control aspect, and maybe you might have in that control aspect some political exposed person, and then you are missing some important information about your client. So if you make a mistake day one, maybe over the 30th day, there is compliance with testing and monitoring, as I was saying before, that if lucky enough in my sample population, they will reperform what the analyst has done to check the quality. But this is only in the scenario that the sample population pick the analyst casework.
Gabriella, how big is the sample population? 10%, 20%, 50%? No, that's still
50, no. It's very low.
In a bank like
It's very low.
Lynch, how much?
It's very low.
Less than 10%?
It's less than 5%.
So you have to be very lucky.
Exactly. You need to be very lucky. And then here is the control, like is the problem that we are now seeing in the governance. So in the 30 days, let's say we are not lucky, and then this guy is still doing the same mistake. He's incrementing the exposure to risk, because it's not identified the UBO, it's not identified the controller of the entity, that is a PEP. And then probably that PEP is involved in some corruption case, and you don't know. You're just moving on. And then after, maybe we are lucky, probably, that the third line that normally does the review every 90 days, every quarter, 90 was too low, so I put 60, sorry guys, but it's 90 days normally. Again, sample population, do you think if we are lucky, that they spot that mistake and that the group of entity, or other maybe hundreds of cases in the meanwhile, hundreds of clients don't have this detail about the control, so we are not compliant, we are breaching the law. If they pick this up, we are lucky, and then they say, listen, probably there is an issue with the control aspect definition, there are some associates that are not getting it right, then look back to your portfolio to see whether we need to do a remediation. Remediation means that you would say, download the report of your client base, okay? Maybe in the specific team or in that specific region, and then you check whether into the system there are the controller. If there are the controller, you're fine. If there aren't, then all those cases needs to be remediated because the controller needs to be put inside. This was how it was before, and this is as it is today. So today, after all the scandals, they have added somewhere, not yet everywhere, like Nordic banks are now applying this, the quality control, quality assurance within the first line. So what means that today, all the people on the first line do the work, and they have anticipated this control to check whether they are doing right within the first line. And normally, if they are good, the quality control will be 100% of the population of high-risk clients that are the riskier, and then a sample population of the low and medium. And then, of course, this is helping to detect the issue maybe at the second, third day, and then the analyst is not making more and more mistakes, and then there is a massive remediation because you didn't check that the person was, or the group of person were not following the procedures. And then, of course, there is now this QC, QA, quality assurance, quality control is more just checking that all the documents are there. It doesn't really make recommendation in terms of improvement. Quality assurance is a little bit more holistic, so it tells you, yes, you need to, they check all the documentation, the information, but they check also the best practice. Are you doing this? Do more, do this better. And then a continuous improvement also in terms of processing procedures. They are a very key element today to make things working better. And then probably here, we'll finish with this slide. Here again, I go back to the knowledge, the client knowledge. I've done different triangles because everyone, at the end of the day, should have the same information about the client. It shouldn't be that I know more than you know more than her know more than Costantino. You know, like, it doesn't make sense. Of course, there are challenges. Challenges are given by privacy, because GDPR and knowledge sharing, also international cross-border sharing is a massive challenge because you cannot really provide free information on data, personal data of a person, sensitive data. Another challenge is, of course, tipping off, because you need to know what to say and what you don't say, and then you need to be knowledgeable. And again, the first line needs to be more knowledgeable, because they have to prevent, they need to understand what is tipping off or not.
But they are less.
Unfortunately, today, I'll tell you the problem today. Compliance is a cost. So executives, and then probably you will talk about this, instead of hiring skilled people in the first line, because they need probably hundreds of analysts, they just hire very junior people with no knowledge about law. Because they are outsourcing somewhere where maybe there is not neither the same legal framework. I mean, Bank of America has external outsourcing in India, in Poland, everywhere. But unfortunately, especially outside Europe, people have a different way of working, a different knowledge about law.
And this is a very important governance issue, because this is related to how you govern your company.
Exactly. This is very important, because to have a cost-effective, they hire people that are not able to do the job. They follow again a checklist. It's not good. It's not good, because you are limiting the person critical thinking, and that is probably the most problematic. And then after I will finish, what is happening now is we are moving towards technology. So technology through artificial intelligence and machine learning, that is going to replace the first line somehow.
Not easy,
Not so hopefully. No, but I still believe that it's critical, also with technology, to have people skilled know the checklist, to check what the system is doing. So all the data gathering, that can be boring sometimes, guys, no? Is going to be done by a computer, and then you will be more the quality assurance that is there in the middle before the second line. And then you will make sure with your amount of knowledge and critical thinking that you are compliant. And then you can check probably more because you have more time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.